I made a date with success. After being tossed and turned by life and wrapped by a knife that stabbed my life until I bled tears of wanting success. I made a date with success because it saw my eyes as they cried as hard as they could, but instead of crying what cleanses you, I cried wood. Hard and dry, I cried until my eyes puffed, until I looked in the mirror and couldn't recognize myself. After giving a man and friends and family my riches and wealth, my eyes made it so that my body couldn't recognize itself. So every time I walked, I wanted to run. When I ran, I wanted to scream. When I screamed, I wanted to fall asleep. But when I slept, I wanted to dream of being successful. So I made my date with success, realizing that I had to go through some things to get there. I had to fall in love and lose myself, get slapped by people who bruised myself, get kicked out of school to use myself so God could isolate me and choose myself. I had to be without a job, sleep sleepless nights, to wake up in fear and convince myself that everything would be all right. Had to break down a few times as time refused to rewind itself so I could do things differently, forgetting that time waits for no one. And every second, of every minute, of every hour, time left me wondering whether I was going to pick my face up and walk, or was I going to put my faith on a timer and only use it during happy times, then lay it down by the riverside, since the only time I took time to exercise my faith is when it had timed out. I have no doubt I'm a warrior in love with success. This mess that confined me will one day turn into something blessed. I realized that what was left to come was my best, so since one day I would marry my Canaan, I have no problem with dating my wilderness. Because dates don't waste time that you spent. They only prepare you for the main event. They caution the winner think twice and before it rains, his Canaan is an umbrella on my life. It protects me from the storm while it's erupting. It keeps me dry while I'm still trusting. I made a date with success even when it didn't feel like it, even when the devil put a wall through it. And I decided I would get to Canaan even if I had to crawl to it. So I got on my knees and I rhymed. To God, I wasn't a waste of time. I went from being happy to being anxious, but I decided that my faith was what I was going to keep. Even when I was homeless and didn't have a place to sleep, I got on my knees anyway and decided to lift my hands. I decided to hide and worship even when I didn't understand. I found myself on the other side after being isolated and being confused, but I realized that my wilderness was what he used. He told me that patience comes in 3 forms: to trust, to believe, and to keep moving forward even when I felt scorned. Dating is only temporary, but you have to endure it even when it's raining. Because once you decide to date your wilderness, you will say, I do to Canaan. When I wrote that, like I said, I didn't know that it was going to be prophetic. So I read it back to myself and tears fell from my eyes. And I realized that in order to marry something, you have to be willing to date it first. So those of us who are married, before we got married, we had to date our spouses. The dating part is only temporary, because if you are dating for an end result, which is marriage, you'll get there, but you have to be in that wilderness season in terms of dating to get to your Canaan, which is your promise, which is your marriage. And so I wrote it from that aspect, and I realized that I needed to be in my pain. I needed to date my pain for a minute to be able to marry my healing and marry my Canaan. And so when I was willing to do that, the process became easier. And so that's the reason, that's part of my why. My why is me saying, I went through a very traumatic time in my life. I went through not passing the bar. I went through getting kicked out of school. I went through having to leave home and come to North Carolina and go to college around people that I didn't know. I came from New Jersey, and this was the first time that I was away from home. So I went through that. I went through just having to leave friends behind and having friends leave me. And I went through so many things of having to cut ties and just doing so many different things that I realized somebody else needs to know how to do that and be okay and say it's okay if I'm not okay, but I'll get there one day. So that's why I'm doing this. I'm This is just the first part of, like I said, under Church Girl Incorporated.